thank you for joining. Today, we are inviting a very special guest, John Kobel from Canada. John, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
Fantastic. We are going to explore some fields that might be of interest to many people. We are going to talk a bit about the conscious mind. We are going to talk about education. We are going also to discuss how to change habits. I think it's going to be quite fascinating. So, John, to start with, outside of Canada, few people know you. So what could you tell us about who you are first, please?
I started out in the photo business. I was copying oil paintings photographically to be printed on a printing press for book publication or whatever. I was asked to copy a page from the Gutenberg Bible and asked if I could reproduce it so perfectly that nobody could tell the difference between the original and the copy. What happened after literally changed my life, because when I was passionately involved in the project, I had a dream. And in the dream, I saw machines work in a very different way. And the next day, the next morning, that dream started on its own to become real, which is where I realized that there was something else working in our universe, which was not something that we had necessarily control over, because every piece of that dream walked into my life on its own. And that was my first US patent, the sharpest images in the world for the next 22 years.
That's quite something. You also told me earlier that you also work with NASA. Is that correct?
Through the Canadian space program, we were given images from the Hubble Space Telescope to sharpen, because the system that we put together could actually sharpen images. And so Excellent. When it was out of focus, the Canadian space program supplied us with images from the Hubble Space Telescope to correct.
Right. And you have been working in this image definition business, if I can call it this way, for how many years?
Well, until the end of conventional photography. We did all the satellite imagery for Canada right up until the early, probably the beginning of the 2000s.
Right. And you started around what time, what date?
In the mid 80s.
In the mid 80s. So let's say 15 good years of focus on this particular work. Excellent. So today, people would like to know what is it that you're doing actually, or what is your main focus?
Well, I've learned that I look around and I see what people are doing, and they don't understand that if we're passionate about what we're doing, we will bring things into our life that we had no idea were there. It's all built on how much passion we're able to put into what it is that we're doing. And what disturbs me in our society is people are doing a job because they need the money. So they're working for somebody else. They're not themselves excited or passionate about what they're doing. And these people, unfortunately, just live an ordinary life. They might make a good salary, but it's not them. There's more to life than that.
Yes.
And that's what I want to look at.
Yes, definitely. What we can also observe is that I'm going to give you a figure I learned this week, because I met a person working in finance who is assisting young entrepreneurs and freelancers. So between Europe and America, there are presently roughly 100 million freelancers That's a growing number. And those freelancers have come to do what they do. They have come to this particular position of being a freelancers for mostly two reasons. The difficult economic situation prevailing in the West, I would say on the North Atlantic, so covering North America and Europe, forcing people, and probably there is some good in that, not to work for someone else, but to find a way to use their own skills and talents and work for themselves out of necessity, because there's not much available. Besides that, the second reason, it's because so many companies went bankrupt, have merged, that people in their 30s, mid 30s, early 40s, even mid 40s are in full possession of their skills, but do not find any other way to make a living if they don't work for themselves. So yes, there are people who actually work because they need to make a living and have forgot their passion, still plenty of them. But there are also, it seems that there is some hope that many people have to work for themselves, by themselves. There is some hope also.
There is some hope, but what we're skirting is what I think is the biggest problem that we face, and that is that most of us from the West have been taught by our parents that we have to work the way they did, that we have to work really hard if we want to succeed, and that to dream is wasting your time. But that's false, because I found out through my own experience that our dreams become real if we're able to add passion to them. And we've been told that not to be excited about something, that you just have to work on a project. But if you work without passion, your life is empty.
Absolutely.
But you can open a mysterious door to the universe to give you everything that you're looking for if you can apply passion to what you're doing.
Exactly. So this is where your intervention can actually help a lot of those, let's say, freelancers, young entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs, no matter how you call it. This is where you can help them in providing guidance and trust, because the trust in oneself is essential here, right?
The trust in oneself is critical. Yes. And that's why with my students, I ask them, if they're working on something, on a project that they're on, don't tell anyone, because you don't want somebody to come up to you and say, what are you doing that for? You know, it's not going to work. That's wrong, because they can kill your best idea by telling you it's not going to work.
That's right. That's right. So basically it's about inspiration. And what the other question I'd like to ask you, actually, which is connected to that, is how did you come to this realization?
Well, when I had the contract for doing the images for the RadarSat, which was the first radar satellite from Canada, I needed a machine to do it. And the machine cost $750,000. And I didn't have that kind of money.
$750,000.
Yes. So I went to a company that had one here in Montreal, just to be in the room with it. And then every day for about 5 minutes a day, I would work on that machine in my mind. And there was the strangest turn of event that happens with people walking into our office in Old Montreal, one of them in particular, who was from Ottawa. I'm in Montreal. He was the head of Science and Technology Canada. And he walked in our door and said, what do you do here? Where did he come from? He showed up because I was seeing myself working on that machine. And he went through our financing, and he went through our books, and he went through our books because it was in the Ramadan. And he said, I've got nothing to do until tonight after sundown. So I've got time to kill. And he went through our books and he found most of the money for the machine. I was looking at getting the machine for free, and I got the machine for free. It was absolutely unbelievable. But that's, again, where I learned that we're not using the faculties that we've got. We've been told not to use them, but it's not true. We can make anything happen that we want.
Right.
And we've been doing it over and over again.
How long had you been, if I may say, meditating on this particular machine, actually? How long did it take you?
That particular machine took me 3 months.
Right.
But during that 3 months, I had 3 different people phone me about the machine, about a machine like that for sale. But each time I said, thank you for calling me, but I'm not interested. And when I hung up the phone, I said, because it's not free. And then an ideal machine showed up. But again, I did exactly the same thing. And they told me, if you're not interested, we're going to send it back to Heidelberg, who manufactured it. And then the people from Heidelberg called me up about the machine. And they said, we have this machine. Are you interested? But nobody knew I was interested in it but me. And so I had 3 phone calls about the machine. The last phone call from Heidelberg, before they went, they said, if you were interested, how would you want the machine rebuilt for you? They were asking me for my shopping list. So I told them exactly what I wanted. And the day Science and Technology Canada told me the first check was coming in, and I knew how much it was, Heidelberg phoned me up to say that the machine is ready for you. It was just like these people were working together behind my back to give me what I wanted. And I asked, the salesman called me up and he told me what Heidelberg wanted for the machine. And I said to them, when's your year end? We were in the beginning, the end of November, going into December. They said, our year end is December 31st. I said, if I have the machine off your hands by December 31st, by your year end, and I give you cash for the machine, will you accept $100,000? And the person on the phone said, are you out of your mind? I said, you can't say that. Go and ask. Go and ask. And the guy went and asked, and he called me back and he said, they said, yes, I got the machine for free because it was with found money.
Right.
That's where I learned there's a different way to work.
Absolutely. So based on this experience, and probably there were other occurrences where this also happened.
But of course, yes.
How did you decide to tailor a program?
Because people were coming to see me in trouble. And so for easily since about early 1980s, I was showing people how to do it.
Right.
And they were coming because they had either gone bankrupt or they didn't know what to do, or they were looking for a way out. But when you see somebody who goes bankrupt and within 3 months is paying everybody back because they learned a different way to use their mind, that makes a big difference. It takes the stress off people. But when they realize that they're responsible, people think that they're a victim of what the government does, but you're a victim of yourself because of your thoughts, because of thoughts you permit to live in your mind.
Because of thoughts we permit to live in our minds.
We have to control our conscious mind. When you're in control of your conscious mind, you're in control of your life. And most people aren't. Most people look at themselves and they think that they're a victim. They think that they can't succeed because there's forces on the outside that are stopping them. No, the only force that stops us from succeeding is ourselves.
Right. This is a powerful statement, and this is actually the main theme of this interview. We put these conscious mind terms as the title of this interview, and this is why we are doing this interview. Dear audience, you are listening to us, and we are talking here about having more power on our conscious mind. because it's powerful. It's extremely powerful. So John can help us and talk with vivid examples of things that happened in his life. And further these many examples, he decided to create a program. So John, what do you think is missing most in the educational system in the West? And probably we can talk about the whole world now. Education system starting from the age of 10 up to 18, before higher studies, before university. What do you think is really missing?
That's a really good question, because actually, when you're saying starting at about the age of 10, I think it starts before that. I think there's a reason why the biggest fortunes in the United States, whether you're talking about Microsoft, whether you're talking about Amazon, whether you're talking about Facebook, whether you're talking about Google, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. Founders and co-founders of all these companies come through the Montessori school system, where they take children at 2.5 years old, roughly, and they teach them and they encourage them to use their imagination. There's a reason that these people are successful. There's a reason that Amazon gave Montessori something like $200 million recently for scholarship funds, because they know where their success comes from. It doesn't come from where you think it comes from. It comes from our ability to know that we can do anything. And when you're encouraged to use your imagination from a very early age, you learn to use it, because that's why we're here. Everything around us is built on our imagination. Nothing exists without our imagination. And if you imagine that you can't pay your bills, that you can't succeed, you can't succeed. If you imagine that you can be a success, you're a success. It starts with you.
Yes, absolutely. There is an example that comes to my mind. The adventures of the Wright brothers, the pioneers of flying. In the old times, I mean, in the preceding centuries, it was said that, okay, things are too heavy to fly. And the Wright brothers were animated by this robust conviction that it's possible to fly. And it was hard. They had to try many times.
Yes.
And they prove it. And then a new industry, a new world was born, because they probably imagined, probably imagined that, flying is possible.
Well, I think it was Henry Ford who said, if you can imagine it, you can have it. It's so important for us to be able to look at what we want and be able to imagine ourselves already there. Now, very critical, and I think this is a point that one has to carry with you, and that is the human mind, I am told, and I use this in what we teach people, can concentrate on something that isn't real for a maximum of about 5 minutes before doubt starts forming. So you want to stop imagining it in a maximum 5 minutes of time, because if you let doubt come in, it will kill what you're doing. So you don't want to permit doubt to walk into what the work you're doing mentally.
Right, to interfere with this spark.
Yeah. So all our work that I do with people is based on a timer set for 5 minutes. All your work has to be done in that 5-minute period, your mental work.
Mental work of imagining something that really happens.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, maximum of 5 minutes. Excellent. So you said that to produce a generation of people able to leverage on their imagination, the education system has to start. I mean, the education process about this has to start from the age of 2, I mean, from kindergarten, basically.
Well, most of our belief systems come from our caregiver. And so the life you're going to be living, it will, in most cases, be the life that your mother's family was living, because your mother's generally your caregiver. And so her experience in life will become your indoctrination. And in your first, don't forget, in your first 6 months of life, or not 6 months of life, but 6 to 10 years of life, that's where you learn who to respect. That's where you learn your religion. Look everywhere around the world. In that period of time, that's when all this comes into your life, and it's taught to you by your caregivers.
Absolutely. All right. The last question for today is about what would you especially recommend to the younger generation today? What would you recommend them to do? And by younger generation, I mean teenagers and young adults who are listening to us now.
That's a very interesting question, because it's not one that you can respond to shortly in a short period of time. But for me, the most important thing is that people from a very early age are encouraged to use their imagination, because nothing exists without your imagination. And if you can take your imagination and attach emotion to it, the only creative force in our universe is imagination. And so when you put passion with imagination, nothing can stop you. Nothing. Whatever it is that you want to do will walk into your life. And I believe our biggest problem is when I meet kids, they say, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Well, I look at them and say, how can you not know what you're passionate about? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What makes you get up early in the morning? Because you can't wait to start your day.
When we look at actually the recent very successful industrialists, by industrialists, I mean the people who not only have an idea, but also had this idea transformed into physical goods, right? Definitely Steve Jobs is an excellent example. And then there are people who divide some very powerful services. I can mention Amazon, of course. Jack Ma. Jack Ma had a very hard time starting his business. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had listened to him when he gave talks at Stanford and Harvard. Many people used to tell him, Jack, you are not a programmer, you do not have money, and you don't know enough powerful people in China. But he made it. So he had to be powered by imagination, because he made
Absolutely.
it, obviously.
Yeah.
And he made it much bigger than all those who had connection, scientific knowledge, and money.
Don't forget that people will be attracted by your passion. People will be drawn to you because of the passion that you have for what it is that you're doing, because people who don't have it are going to want to grab on to what you're doing to be with you. So it becomes very easy if you're really excited about what you're doing. If you're really passionate about it, you act like a magnet, and you'll bring in people from everywhere, and people don't even know people who don't even know you will be drawn to you because of the energy that you're putting out. The oldest internet that exists is us.
This is a great quote, actually. Yes, I can I can refer to that in my own life. Absolutely, yes. All right. So to sum up to what we discussed with John today, we talked about the power of the conscious mind. Be aware of our thoughts, and when we have a very important project we want to materialize, it's important to use as much as possible our imagination, focus on it every day, and see the result, and and also grab the opportunities, I think, because sometimes it may look too good to be true that suddenly people come and some people might say, oh, what's going on now? I mean, people have to accept and walk the way, right?
They have to accept it, but you have to be very careful because people will always try to downplay what you're doing. If you share what you're working on with somebody, the first thing they're going to say is, don't be crazy. You know that's not going to work. You don't want those people around, so keep your mouth closed. Don't tell people what you're doing. Just do it. Let them come to you after and say, how did you do it?
That's right. That's right. Doubt is toxic, basically.
Hmm?
Doubt is totally toxic.
For me, doubt is a killer.
Doubt is a killer for our project and what matters most to our life. Yeah.
100% agree with you.
Excellent. John, we are going to conclude this first interview about what you are doing. I'm certain some people will want to know more. And I'm just telling every one of you who has watched this interview, stay tuned. There will be more on social media. There will be more on LinkedIn, absolutely, on Facebook, on Instagram. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this time, John. And
Thank you,
I say, everyone, see you soon. See you very, very soon.